Well, thank you for joining us indoors on such a beautiful day. I hope everybody's doing well. And please stay safe with all the corona isn't quite over yet. So I know we all want to throw our masks away and run around outside, but please be careful just a little bit longer. Um, there's today I'm always terrible when somebody asks me to prepare a Dharma talk ahead of time because when when I talk to people, there's a connection between all of us. And it's if I talk from here, then I'm talking from that connection right now and what that energy is. And it gets awkward if I'm trying to recite something from a couple of weeks ago. So bear with me if I seem to wander off what I promised a little bit. But this connection is really fascinating and really important. It ties in so much of what underlies Buddhist thought or Buddhist teachings. And actually, to me, it's really the heart of what we call Sun Buddhism too. Because to this idea of connection is really central. Sun is about understanding this connection we have and actually applying it to our lives and to the world around us. And it's a little bit more than even just connection, but you can say inherent oneness. If we talk about the Brahma net, in Korean, bommang. Have people heard about bommang? Okay. The bommang is kind of that similar idea where, every single node, every single knot is connected is reflected in every other one. Is connected to every other single part. And the thing is, it's like a spider web, right? If you touch one part, the vibrations spread throughout the whole thing. That's how spiders hunt. If one little thing touches their net, they hear that, they get that. So the thing is we all share this connection with everything around us. And it gets really easy to lose sight of that because we don't feel it as obviously, we don't sense it as obviously. But we are all connected. We are all interconnected. Even if you go back and look at what we call ignorance, right? Ignorance is this idea of me, na, right? That I exist separately from other people. I exist apart from other people. Okay. All right. What to talk about? So the fundamental source of ignorance is I exist apart. I exist separately. And the opposite of that is I don't exist separately. I don't exist apart. I have my own distinct existence and my own distinct role to play. But what I do affects other people. What other people do affects me. If I am aware of my own upright center, then it gets a lot easier to be unaffected by what other people are doing. And one of the things I notice about spiritual practice is that when I have my own upright center, I'm actually a pretty good lie detector. I'll be honest. If a politician is saying something dishonest, or they're saying, "Oh, I didn't do that. I wasn't there," somehow I know it's like, "Oh, yeah, he's lying," and it's because, if you know something, because we're connected, everything else knows that. So one of the interesting things is that it gets really hard to lie to practitioners, because even though your words are saying one thing, a spiritual practitioner is connected on the deeper levels, or they're trying to connect to the deeper levels. And so they pick up on the actual truth. You do one thing, but you say another. And so it's like there's two signals going out, like almost like quite like stereo, where the words are one level, but at this other level, the truth of what happened is going on. If we're practicing getting in touch with this own inner light, if we're practicing letting go, if we're practicing trusting, if we're practicing mindfulness, we're touching upon that. We're connecting to that. And we just chanted the Heart Sutra, and the way that translation is structured, the Prajnaparamita is this energy, is this connection. And so, talk about the bodhisattvas being in touch with that, the bodhisattvas being connected to that. When we're in touch with that, we're picking up on what's really going on in the world around us. And so we're not as easily deceived by surface appearances or surface words. The flip side of that is other people also are deceived by our words. So we can say one thing, but because we're all connected, there's more than just words going back and forth between us. There's this energy. So even though I don't say anything, just thinking it, the people I work with pick up on it. It's a little bit annoying, to be honest, because in English, there's what we call a social lie, right? A white lie. Oh, yes, I really loved that. And, you didn't, but you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, so you say that. But the more people practice, the more they pick up on that. And so the funny thing that happens with this is that you can, just telling yourself, oh, I don't like that guy. Oh, that guy's annoying. Oh, he's so full of himself. He walks in the room and all of a sudden he picks up on this energy. He doesn't know why he picks up on it, maybe. He doesn't know what I did, but all of a sudden he picks up a feeling. It's like, I don't like Chongo. Why? Because Chongo doesn't like me. Chongo's thinking negative these negative thoughts again and again about me. And people pick up on this. It affects people's behavior because he walks into the room and he goes, ugh, that guy, right? And he doesn't know why he does it necessarily, or she, or whomever. But it's because we're connected, because the thoughts we give rise to affect people's reactions. So, sort of a worst case is he walks in and we just start fighting. He just starts yelling at me, or, it becomes something out of control. And, later maybe it's like, I don't know why I behave so badly. Why do I just feel rotten every time I walk into a room with that guy? And you all may know people in your lives like this, so you just do not get along. As soon as you see them, you feel unhappy, you feel bad. Now, one of the things about this is one of the similar behaviors is trying to push people to do things they don't want to do. So if I'm working with somebody, or there's somebody I know, and I'm always thinking, oh, they should do it better. They're not doing it good enough. They need to do it faster. They need to be on time. They need to whatever. People pick up on that because of this unseen connection we have. They become aware of it and they perceive it, and they start feeling pressured. They start feeling maybe resentful or being pushed into doing something they don't want to do. And this is, if you're a parent, this is a big deal, because, kids feel stressed out about everything, right? There's hormones, there's boyfriends and girlfriends, there's school friends. And so they already feel like they've got a whole bunch of stuff stacked on top of them. And so it takes a little bit of perception or awareness to make sure you're not accidentally doing this to other people. But so the thoughts I give rise to cause reactions from other people, right? If I'm thinking negatively about other people, they react to me negatively. Some people are very what's the word for it? I don't remember the word for it, but it's like, oh, you think I'm bad? I'll show you bad behavior, right? You think I'm behaving badly? I'll let you see what bad behavior looks like. And so, it's like they want to get revenge on you for thinking about negatively about them. Other people, sometimes people just wilt, they fade, or they don't feel free to achieve their full potential. And so these are kind of on the negative sides. And this is why the thoughts we give rise to are so important. Not just, modern psychology talks about myself, right? The things I say about myself. But because we're connected, not just through words, not just through speech, not just through touch, but through this unseen connection, this Dharma net, the Bommang, it affects everybody else. This energy goes back and forth between us. And the thing is this gets a little bit complex, but even connection is a little bit of a mistaken expression. It's a little bit of a dualistic expression. In the dualistic realm, it works, but it doesn't fairly describe the whole. The whole truth is we are one, right? We are one. Everything is working together as one whole. You can't even say parts of one whole. It's parts of one whole in the sense that for the time being, we have a distinct appearance, we have a distinct role, we have distinct responsibility. We are a collection of karma that's different from other collections of karma. So there, you can't say we're not separate, but at the same time, we're part of one functioning whole. Now, this is particularly important with, it affects other people and it affects us. Because if I look at politicians, right, it gets really easy to think, oh, this politician is a terrible guy, or this person's a terrible person. But remember, people react on the energy we're giving them. If we're thinking negatively about them, we're either causing reactive thoughts, like thoughts of revenge or negative thoughts, or we're suppressing their energy, right? We're suppressing their potential. So a lot of times, if you want somebody to behave better, you have to encourage them in good directions. So if it's so much like, I don't have children, but I had to take a lot of child psychology classes in college, and I have nieces and nephews and that stuff. But it's so much like raising children, because you can criticize a child for doing something wrong, and that just kind of, a lot of times it makes them, in English, close in on themselves, right? But the best way to do things is to encourage the things they do right. Oh, hey, you picked up your dirty clothes. You put your laundry in the clothes hamper. Way to go. That was a great job, right? And, kids are very simple. They want affection. They want love. They want connection. And really, that's the same thing most of us want. at the very end of the end of the day, the end of our lives, people want connection. They want to feel appreciated. And so even politicians, some politician in Russia that I've never seen before, oh, you stupid, no good, lousy, rotten person. That doesn't really create anything positive, right? But hey, you can do better. Let's behave better. Or, let it go. You don't need another country. Relax. We can input this positive mind, this positive attitude, and it has an effect. It has a effect for change. But when it comes to country, in a sense, bigger stuff doesn't exist. But when it comes to the whole country, it's almost like you do need a certain percentage of people who are, who are using their mind in a more spiritual sense. Where if you don't have enough people like that, there's a limitation to how much you can do. Everybody here knows chonggosunim? Well, hold on. My Unsasanim's teacher was Tanhosanim, and his teacher was Hanmaum, and Hanmaum's teacher was chonggosunim. So I was always interested in him a little bit. But chonggosunim disappeared about 1904, right? I think it was 1904, 1912. Somewhere around there, he just disappeared. He was teaching at Hainsa, and then poof, he just basically gone. Well, I don't know why chonggosunim acted like that. Part of me thinks that he saw the wave of how things were coming at Korea. He saw the wave of people's minds weren't ready for the modern era, and the Japanese and the Russians and the Americans were more advanced, and that just materially Korea was going to get overwhelmed. But he couldn't raise enough consciousness fast enough. He was trying to teach people, but people could only digest a little bit at a time. And sometimes I wonder if he looked around and he said, I've done everything I can. There's just no more I can do. And, there's going to be a lot of change coming in the next 40 or 50 years, and it's going to be really ugly. And so I don't want to see any more of this. And he just went and led a simple life helping school kids. And now I don't know. People at that level of functioning, it's like if you've never worked as a CEO, you don't know what the job of a CEO really is. You don't know all the little details that they have to figure out, and the politics and all the stuff that might be going on. And so I think it's the same thing with those deeply enlightened people, is that you don't know exactly what they're doing. But there is truth that things go in Korean, to use the Konglish, where we put our minds. 우리가 마음에 어떻게 쓴다라, 이 에너지가 움직여요. Oops, Korean, okay. I'm supposed to be giving this talk in English, right? Not Korean? Okay. So there's kind of a funny story here at the Anyang Hanmaum Sonwon. Years ago, there was a sanim who could apparently see the energy in the ground. And he was driving by the Anyang Hanmaum Sonwon when they were constructing the new Bopdang. And he basically just stomped on his brakes, and he'd never been to the Anyang Hanmaum Sonwon, but he saw all of the energy from Kwanaksan was flowing all the way down around Samsungsan from Kwanaksan and came straight to where they were building the new Dharma hall. And he was completely shocked because, he knew the Pungsu Jiri, and it didn't look like it should have been that nice a spot. And so he came by and he went up to see the Hankansanim, and he asked her, how did you find this spot? What about the mountains or the valleys or whatever told you that this was such a good spot? And she looked at him and she was a little bit like, no, the energy goes where you put your mind, right? You can find places with good energy, but if you raise the intention that the energy should flow here, then the energy moves that direction. So it's two very different concepts. One is kind of very passively just trying to find a place that already has good energy. But the other one is we can use our minds to make a place that's got good energy, right? This you could call it ki, or this just the energy of the world. Like I said, it goes where our minds go. And so we don't have to just passively try to find a place that has good energy. If we use our minds, if we raise our intention that this should have a good, harmonious energy of the whole, right? Not just what I want, because that can get a little bit poisonous, but this energy where everything benefits, myself and other people all benefit, then it'll flow there. The funny thing, the basic of spiritual practice is letting go of I, right? This is the even Christianity has this, where Jesus said something like, you have to give up everything, then you have to lose the world to gain the world, right? Once you let go of I, the Hengsim used the word dying. She said you have to die 3 times. And dying sounds a little bit drastic normally, but of course she didn't mean the body, but letting go of I feels like dying in a way, right? In America, we have even most people are sort of Christians. They may never go to church, but if you ask them if they're Christians, they say, well, sure, Catholic or Christian. In America, Catholics and Christians are the same, are all Christians. Just a heads up on that. But you have Christmas trees, right? And technically it's Jesus's birthday, but even if you're not really much of a Christian, you still have a Christmas tree, and there'll be presents under it. And sometimes when the kids are little, there'll be a present from Santa Claus. But there's also presents from parents and brothers and sisters and stuff. And so they start showing up a week or 2 before Christmas. And when you're a little kid and you see a pretty wrapped box under the tree with your name on it, it's like, what is that? You want to pick it up, and can you hear anything, or how heavy is it? And oh, is this the size of a Game Boy, or well, maybe. And you're always asking your parents, how much longer till Christmas? And mom goes, 8 days. And you're like, I can't wait 8 days. I'm going to die. And then, how long is it till Christmas? 7 days. And this is like dying for little kids, right? Oh, I gotta wait. I want to know now. And it's like torturing little kids. But this dying is kind of the same thing, where it's like, I gotta let go of everything connected to this I want this, I want that, I want to see this, I want to achieve this, I want to feel this way. But the thing is about this I is a very limited view of things, right? It's a very narrow perspective. It's based on my fixed ideas from the past, right? So It's based on the habits I learned in the past. It's based on the values I learned in the past. And they tend to be fairly dualistic. They tend to be fairly narrow. And, so there's a lot that I'm not seeing based on that. And it's a very incomplete picture of things, right? A lot of times we want things, or we want to see things a certain way, but we don't know we don't know the side effects of that, right? We don't know what will happen if we get that. The biggest example is romance, right? So many times people have been interested in somebody else, but it just never worked out, or they got rejected. And then later they realized, oh, thank goodness I didn't marry that person, right? Oh, my life would have been a disaster. But at the time, we didn't have the perspective. We didn't know enough to see what was really going on, or to see the full picture. But the thing is because we're connected with everybody else, because we're connected with everything else, when we take that I, we take all the stuff around that I, and we just completely let go of that. We let that meet with this, we call it true self, or fundamental mind, or Buddha nature. We let that meet this energy of the whole. Then pretty much automatically, we go in a direction that's the most healthy for us. We go in towards the situation that's most harmonious for us. When I first started studying Korean, the only foreign language program that was really in Korea was Yonsei Ohakdang, right? So I started going to Yonsei Ohakdang, and it was okay, but it was a pretty hard, Yonsei's a pretty hard school, Ohakdang, or regular school. And I went with one of my Dobansnim, and he was giving a talk in Puyo at Chongcheng Daehakyo, maybe somewhere in Puyo or Kongju or somewhere down there. There's a university, and the first thing I noticed, if there's a university in Kongju, compared to Yonsei, it's like, oh, that's a terrible school, right? People kind of look down on that compared to Yonsei, or because it's not one of the sky schools. But the first thing I noticed was all the students on campus looked happy, right? I didn't realize it, but compared to Yonsei, all the students there were happy, and they were relaxed, and they were growing. At Yonsei, all the students looked stressed. A bit like this, where it's like, too much pressure isn't the best to help people grow. It's like 2 bad years in the army, right? I survived it. Ugh. I didn't develop as a person, but I just kind of like a turtle trying to get through it. And so what I think is best is just a reflection of my own fixed ideas, not what's necessarily really for the best, or not what I actually need. And so when we take everything we're facing, good, bad, everything, and we entrust it to this Buddha nature we have, this is our connection to the whole, and this is where all the energy of the whole is functioning. And so it's like it sorts itself out in the most harmonious direction. Whereas if I cling to this I, you need goals, and you need to make an effort, but sometimes this I is just a reflection of my fixed ideas, right? It's not necessarily that great of a thing to do. But the more I let go, the more I reflect inwardly, the more I return inwardly, the more this self corrects. This is, if you talk to people, this sounds like mindfulness meditation, and it sounds like Bangha Chuk, But if you talk to people who've practiced with the Wadu for a long time, they'll say the same thing. They'll say, oh, you get to the same place with the Wadu. So I think all spiritual practices, all real spiritual practices take you back to this inherent connection with everything. So, sometimes we want to go to a place with good energy, like, the Bopdang has good energy, or this place has good energy. And that may be true, but one step further is, I'm the one who can provide that good energy for the Bopdang. I'm the one who can provide that source of energy for myself, because I'm connected to all of this. So if I'm going around looking for something else to give me energy, I'm ignoring the fact that I have that source within myself, right? We all have this source within each of us. And spiritual practice is tapping into that. Any true spiritual teacher wants you to awaken to your own energy, right? They want to see you be able to go forward on your own and grow and develop and find the best path for you. It's exactly the same as a parent, right? It's that same unconditional love as a parent. Because most parents, they're happy to have their kids say they love them, and they're happy to have their kids come and visit, and they're happy to have some sign that their kids appreciate them. But they want to be able to know their kids can go out on their own, right? People don't realize it until they see it happen to themselves or their family. But the hardest thing for any parent is to be worried about their child in the future. What happens to my child when I'm not here, right? So with severely handicapped kids, this is a really hard thing for parents, because what happens if I'm not here to take care of them? How will they be able to function on their own? Because most parents are lucky enough that they don't really necessarily realize this. But even if I'm not here, my kids are going to be fine. That's a real blessing for parents. That's a serious blessing for parents, because they're going to be okay, even if I'm not here. What else was I talking about? So, I'm not sure that we can say that all of karma is this connection between us. But in a way, a lot of what gets called karma is this connection between us. Is if I'm making this expression is a little bit crude, but it's so dramatic. It's like peeing in the swimming pool, right? So if I'm in a swimming pool and I pee in the water, other people suffer, but I'm the one in the middle of that, right? And karma, well, a lot of what we call karma is kind of the same thing, because it's the energy I've made coming back to me after it's grown. So it's like planting, it goes out in the world, it gathers more energy, and then it comes back on me. So if I'm making the people around me miserable, right? If I'm being hard on them, if I'm being cruel to them, that's what surrounds me, is people who are suffering, and it increases my own suffering. And so in a lot of ways, this energy we share, this energy we're caught up in, is karma. But it's not, that kind of karma doesn't have to be that way, right? If I change my mind, that stops. So there's there's manifest karma and there's unmanifest karma. If I'm driving very badly, if I'm behaving very badly, you can look at that and say, oh, this guy's going to have a terrible accident. But it doesn't, I don't have to have that accident. That accident isn't like fate or destiny. It just means if I don't change the way things are going, they're going to keep going in this direction until something unpleasant happens. But I can change that by changing the thoughts I give rise to. Instead of thinking negatively about other people, and instead of by paying attention to how I'm thinking about other people, I change the energy I give out to other people. I change the energy that goes out to them, and that changes the energy that comes back to me. Also, this ties into a couple of things that are, if you have any kind of, if you want to see any kind of spiritual growth, there's two absolute things you got to be careful about, right? One, I always say this, and some of you have probably heard this before, but I'll repeat it. One is blaming other people, and the other is viewing things positively. You got to, if you get caught up in blaming other people, your spiritual growth will just stop. It'd be really hard, just a little bit. But if you're saying, we get unconscious in our thoughts towards other people, where it's like, oh, it's his fault, it's her fault, it's their fault. But as long as we're doing that, we're saying we don't have a connection with them. We're saying this event, this thing had no connection with me because it's her fault. Unconsciously, that's 100% on her or him or whoever. But that's not the way things work, right? Things are always what do you call that? I'm trying to remember to speak English. Things are always an exchange of energy, a back and forth of energy. And even if it's mostly somebody else's fault, I was still there. I was still part of that. And there's always something you could have done a little bit better. Not necessarily, but, I was part of that. And so by blaming somebody else, I'm saying we're disconnected. I had nothing to do with that. And that damages my own spiritual growth because I'm saying I'm not part of a whole. I'm something separate from that. And it also reinforces this idea of I or me as existing apart. So what else? The other thing is like I said, it goes back to that energy that I'm sending out, is view things positively. Because there's a couple of things here. But if I view other people positively, it's like sunshine and plants, right? If you're growing plants, they always start pointing towards the sunshine, right? Hebarigi, sunflowers, are the most common example where they always want to face the sun. But other plants will do the same thing. People also like this kind of warmth. They like, even if I don't say anything, oh, she's a good person. He's a good guy. He's doing pretty good. People always like that kind of warmth and acceptance. And they kind of move towards that. Sometimes you see this with politicians. In English, they call it charisma, right? But I think it's more than just charisma. I think it's a lot of lives of taking care of other people, of thinking about the best of other people. Right. Positively. Oh, the other funny thing is, and I believe this is probably true. Money also likes this warm energy. It's a little bit surprising, but one of the Heng Sim said this more than once. And she said, money also likes warm and friendly places. So she said, if your house is always, noisy with people fighting and arguing and, money, she said, it's like money looks around the doorway and goes, oh, no, and runs away. And my dad had a friend. He's got to have passed away now. But he was so funny because he didn't care about money, right? He never really chased after money. As long as he had enough money for beer, he was happy. But he truly did not care about money. And he was the richest person I knew. When my dad used to work in the forest cutting timber, right? The big North American trees. And this man, his name was Walter. He was my dad's partner, cutting working in the forests. And the logging company would have to send somebody to Walter's house and say, Walter, we need you to cash your paychecks, right? In America, they pay you by like a songgum supo, and or a little bit like om, but like instant om, like the company checks. But because he wasn't cashing them, he was causing problems for the accountants. 저 회계사가 좀 너무 코안해서 이거 좀 빚지가 정리 안 됐어서 그래서 저 사람 집에 야 빨리 은행에 넣어라. 이거 없어서 귀찮아. But he was like, oh, okay. What do I got? Oh, yeah, here's one. Here's one. Like this. And because maybe there was some good sunup or some karma in there. But because he didn't care about money, he was always finding money. He was talking to a friend about, he wanted a, what do you call it? Is it tagu? Like in English, pool? I think maybe tagu. Tangu. He wanted a table for his boys to play pool on. And so he was talking to a friend and he said, oh yeah, I think I want to get one of those for the boys. He said, oh, I've got one upstairs and it's really old, but you can have it if you want it. And he went up and he looked at it, he's like, are you sure? He's like, oh yeah, get it out of there. Just clean out the space and I'll be happy. And it was made in the 1800s, right? 1900년대 아니고 1800년대. And it had like iron legs that were like in the shape of lions. And it was very nice. And he put it in his basement, and somebody came, and one of his friends or somebody he knew was visiting, and he looked at it and he said, that's a really nice antique. And I'll give you $10,000 for it. And he was like, nah, I just have to buy a new one if I got rid of this one. I don't want to move another table around. And so he had this really valuable pool table, but he just wanted to play pool. He didn't want to do anything with it. And so because his mind was so open like that, he wasn't grasping for money. All kinds of money came to him. It was really pretty funny. I've talked a lot about connections, and it's true, but at the same time, it's also a little bit of a dualistic concept, right? Because if I say connections, I'm saying connections from one point to another point, like there's two separate things. And so that's a little bit of it has a use. It ultimately, it's maybe not the right description, but when we describe our past habits, when we describe how we want to look at our lives, it's a useful way. It's a useful tool. How am I treating other people? How am I thinking about other people, right? Because this is the thing is, like I said at the beginning, I'm pretty good about not saying things about other people. But sometimes I get irritated and I don't say anything, but everybody knows what I'm thinking, even though I'm not saying anything. It's kind of unfair. But this energy we give out connects with other people and they can feel it. And so it's like our lives exist on two different levels, right? Or dimensions. One dimension is words and speech and appearance. And the other dimension is this unseen dimension. And because we're still connected to this unseen dimension, sometimes if we meet somebody who's like a very bad person or a sagigun or something like this, sagigun are trying to show one appearance. Oh, I'm so friendly and trustworthy. But at the same time, we may feel like, oh, no, stay away from this guy. Once you learn about this connection a little bit, once we learn to live with this, we kind of learn to trust it. Because if we're used to living in our head, we're looking for ideas, right? We're looking for logic. Why? There's no logical reason for me not to trust this person. Okay, so I'll trust them. And then, something bad happens. But when we learn about this unseen connection, we get in touch with this inner voice, if you will. It's much more like, oh, okay, right. I don't have a logical reason why I don't trust this person, but I'm not going to trust this person. And so a lot of it is experience, right? So we don't trust them and we pay attention. And was my perception correct, right? Was my judgment correct? And that way we kind of, is this inner voice my true self or is it my karma, right? Has everybody here heard of? Everybody here knows Shakespeare, but have you read this? Breathe. How many people here have read Hamlet? Are people in Korea familiar with Hamlet very much? Is that required in school? Okay. The thing about Hamlet, right at the beginning, it's really interesting because Hamlet meets the ghost of his father, right? And the ghost, this ghost tells him, I was murdered by my brother. I want you to get revenge for me and kill my brother, who's currently the king, your uncle. Well, the first thing Hamlet does is he says, is this really the ghost of my father? Or is this some demon come to cause me to send my own soul to hell? Right? So Shakespeare wrote this about the year 1600. So, 400 years ago. And people were thinking, are the thoughts I'm having real thought, the truth about reality? Or is this something like opshik, right? Some karmic echo that's going to cause me problems if I follow it. And that's a lot of what we have to struggle with as spiritual practitioners, because people have an idea, and if we just follow the idea, it can be something that completely destroys us. A lot of does everybody here remember the drama Wangun? Right? And the Wangun's boss was originally Kungye. Kungye had a piece of bone tile fall on him that a bird dropped, and it looked like the character Wang was on it, right? Kungye sees one thing and he says, oh, I'm supposed to be king. And he goes charging off to become king, and he becomes king, but he becomes a terrible king, and he dies terribly. Well, I think Kungye must have been really ambitious politically. He got one thing, and he's like, yes. And really, with these kinds of things, you need to return them back inside again. Let that sink back inside again and see what happens. Am I really supposed to be king, or is this just some random piece of karma popping up? In Kungye's case, it was some random piece of karma that destroyed him, right? He would have been much better off ignoring that. But there's so much stuff like in our own lives like that. I mean, I don't think any of us are going to run out and try to become king of Korea, but is this a good idea? Should I do this? And with so much stuff, it's always good to ask inside. When you start practicing, sometimes we get really nice spiritual experiences, right? If you first start practicing sitting meditation or mindfulness meditation, there'll come a point where, and it might be described as samadhi or samme, where you see everything very clearly. Like the whole world becomes very quiet and colors become really spectacular. Like a bird's feather is just incredibly, insanely beautiful. And when we're practicing, we have these kinds of experiences where we transcend this I. But we have to let go of those experiences too. Because we're not, nothing is fixed. Nothing stays exactly the same. But when we have those kinds of experiences, we're still influenced by past habits and past ways of thinking. And so one of the very first things that tends to happen is we want to grab onto that. We want to cling to that experience, and we don't want it to change, and we don't want it to go away. But the fundamental nature of the world is everything is flowing. Everything is changing. And so if we try to hold on to one experience, if we try to hold on to one spiritual, even a good spiritual experience, it starts becoming something. We're not holding on to the experience. We're holding on to the memory of the experience. We're holding on to what we thought happened. And as we do this I like, I want to keep this, it starts coming up into that. And with it, it brings attachment. It brings desire. And we don't even see it. Or so this is more of a sometimes I give the example. It's like, wow, the whole world is wonderful. Everything is perfect. Everything is just as it is. Oh, that Mekju is wonderful. Mekju is a magical creation. Ooh. And then, you start getting yourself into trouble and doing stupid things. Because we're coming from the past, right? People who have awakened will talk about transcending time and place, right? Shigong Chowa Handa. But until we get to that point, we're growing, right? We're growing from the past to the future. And what that means is we're bringing the habits and desires from a lower stage of evolution with us. All the habits and desires I have right now were made before now, right? It's obvious. But they were made before now at a lower state of evolution, hopefully. And so they're more dualistic. They're more I-centered than I am now. And so if I just react to things without thinking, I'm bringing forth these old habits from lower levels of existence. Some of you some of you may have noticed this, but when you get stressed or when you get angry, all of a sudden you may realize you hear your dad's voice or your mom's voice coming out of your mouth, saying the same thing your mom or your dad said. And it's like, oh my God, no, I don't want to be like that. But it's just like, where did this come from? And our old habits, our old ways of thinking are exactly like that. They'll pop out through our consciousness. And so the best way to deal with these is what we call spiritual practice. Everybody has to figure it out for themselves, right? Everybody has to find their own path forward through it, find what works for them. But sometimes it's just awareness, right? Mindfulness meditation, banghachak, letting go of attachments, just letting go and trusting. Sometimes it works for Wadu meditation. But when we do that, let's see how to say this. Habits are like semi-conscious energy, right? To use an English word that's a little bit difficult, I call it reactive energy. It's like your mom's voice coming out of your mouth without even thinking about it. But if instead of just letting it happen, I try to be 100% present and I try to be aware of it and be there while it's happening and then let that go back, I tend to start dissolving that, right? That chain of action and reaction begins to break down. I begin to dissolve that habit. And so I can start to move forward. I can start to become free from that. Now, the problem is that I may have input that habit 10,000 times, right? So one time comes up and then one time goes away, and I'm present, I'm mindful, and I dissolve it. But then 30 seconds later, a very similar one pops up. And so I think, oh, it didn't go away. But, in fact, it did go away. I just had a very similar one as before. So, because to go back to this idea of connections, what is the implication for us? What is the implication for our lives? Well, the implication is pay attention to how am I treating the people I'm connected to. Pay attention to how am I thinking about other people. What sorts of thoughts or just what attitude am I looking at them with? What color of glasses am I looking at them with? Am I looking at them with, oh, this is somebody who's growing. This is somebody who can grow positively. This is the dumbest person in the world, right? And it's just when you realize you're doing it, it's like, oh, okay, wow, I don't need to look at people that way. I don't need to treat people that way. I don't want to treat people that way. Okay, let go of that when we realize it. Become aware of it, be one with it, and let it go. And sometimes we have to, letting go. You think letting go brings things back to neutral, but sometimes letting go brings it like only this far. And so it's actually helpful to go the other way and think, okay, I hope their lives go well. I hope they grow in wisdom. I hope they're healthy, right? And just actually kind of try to force the needle the other way and actually think actively positive things about them. Because most people who do things that hurt us are doing so from ignorance or pain, right? Some people have actual forms of mental illness where it's a big problem, but like so my own history, there was a boy in elementary school, junior high school, who was always causing me problems, right? He always had just the sharpest mouth, sharpest tongue. He was always just poking me. And one day in the 7th grade, he was harassing me, and it was right before the teacher came in. I got so angry, I threw a punch at him. I really wanted to hit him. Just crack. But he ducked. My punch went over him. He ducked, and then the teacher walked in the door, and it was like, oh. And so I was like so disappointed. I really wanted to hit him. And I was always taller than other people, so I was really good about, I never hit anybody, never hurt anybody. But this guy, I wanted to hit him. But later, about 10 years later, I remembered that, and I realized he was really fast, right? I threw a punch at him, and he was just like, and I realized the only way a child is that fast at ducking a punch is if he's been hit a lot at home, right? And then I remembered some rumors about his dad being like not such a nice guy. I realized, this kid's been hit at home a lot. And that's why he's so fast. And that inner unhappiness is also why he's causing problems at school. And so that didn't make my life any easier. But you realize that his bad behavior is coming from a place of pain. And so it makes it easier to let go of my resentment towards him. Saying, if he hadn't been hurting, he wouldn't have behaved like this. And we don't see our own behavior, right? If we saw a videotape of how I was behaving at the same time, I'd probably be like, oh God. Yeah, that's why we never got along, because I was being obnoxious too. But we don't realize that about ourselves. But so there's one thing about thinking positively about that can maybe turn his behavior around. There's some kinds of mental illness that it's hard to do much about, to be honest. Okay. The most famous one you probably know is Donald Trump, right? Psychologically, he is what's called a malignant narcissist, where basically everything you see about his behavior is completely right off the psychological checklist for a narcissist. It doesn't trust anybody, always thinks he's the best, never admits he made a mistake, always tries to use other people for his own gratification. And there's nothing you can say to them that will change their behavior. 여기 마음으로서 잘 모르겠어요. 그래도 조금 힘들어요. 그래도 maybe a little bit, but it's more for knowing this guy is like this, right? This person is always going to behave like this. No matter what I do, he's going to behave like this. So I shouldn't be surprised if he behaves badly, right? And when I interact with him, this is his limitation, right? This is how he's going to act. So I just protect myself. Don't get stressed. If you're working with somebody and there's understanding where somebody's at. If you're doing any kind of work, some people need there's some people you tell them what the job is, and then to come get me when you're done, right? And then 3 months later they show up and they say, okay, we're done, and they did a great job. Some people you need to remind them every once in a while. Oh, how's that going? What's the progress? Any problems? And some people will just stop if they hit a problem and then not tell you they stopped. And so you're like, oh, okay. But you just know, okay, I need to check on this person once a day and see how they're doing, make sure everything's going okay, and everything in between. And so it's just knowing what their capacity is and responding accordingly. And so there's no reason to hate them. It's like, okay, this is where they're at. This is what they can handle. This is what they can absorb, and responding accordingly.
Together,